Welcome back to Another Thing. I'm Larry Menti. We come to you now from a conference room in Winans Hall at Rutgers University. We're here because, like many universities and institutions across the country, they are trying to deal with the scars of their past. And recently, the Chancellor of the university, after some complaints from African American students, after some concerns, initiated a study that resulted in this book, Scarlet and Black. It looks at Rutgers history with racism and slavery. And joining us right now is Chancellor Richard Edward. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
What was the idea of getting all the good, the bad, and the ugly out in the open?
Really started with a meeting that I had with some of our student leaders, some of our African-American students, who said to me that they were familiar with a book written by a professor at MIT called Ebony and Ivy, that looked at the history of the earliest higher ed institutions in the United States in terms of their role with churches, which were involved in starting those institutions, and slavery. And that Rutgers was mentioned in there. And it was pretty clear that the early presidents of Rutgers and many of the other people involved in the founding of Rutgers were themselves slave owners. The students also suggested to me that they thought that there had been some slaves involved in the building of Old Queens, our oldest building, where my office is. And I came back in the fall and decided to create a committee to look at the history of slavery and disenfranchised populations like Native Americans in the founding of Rutgers University.
There are some students that are asking that you acknowledge the past with either statues or naming. Is that in the works?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We know the name of one particular slave who was involved in the construction of Old Queens, where my office is, and we plan to have a real memorial marking him. And so we want to really memorialize that, not just for Will, but for the other people that worked on the building of the early buildings that we don't know their names.
There is an argument to be made that we have to be real careful when we impose the morals and the social values of today on the social values of the past. Are you finding that a hard thing to navigate?
It's not so hard to navigate here because I think this process was really well received on the campus, and but I think that there's a lot of controversy about whether you take a name off of a building or whether you do something to really inform people about the whole history of the name on that building. We think that putting some permanent markers that talk about the entire history of the individual for whom that building is named is a better way to go, that will preserve that history in ways that taking the name off a building doesn't do in the same way.
And when do you think that will happen?
Over the course of the spring.
That quickly?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Chancellor Edwards, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I appreciate your time, and we'll be back as you go through this process, a process that we're all going through. Chancellor Richard Edwards from Rutgers University. Still to come on Another Thing, Dawn goes to the place where they train canine companions for the blind.